The overrepresentation of Black students in special education is a prominent equity-related ethical issue seen in schools throughout the country. As a special education teacher, this equity issue is especially important to me, and one that I see daily within my practice. Therefore, I would like to better understand the root causes and possible steps to achieve more equitable outcomes. Jordan noted this is an equity issue because an annual report from the IDEA shows that Black students are overrepresented in all 13 disability categories. Systemic inequalities, such as the use of standardized assessments, as well as the impacts of biases on subjective data measures used during the evaluation process, influence this inequity. This is an ethical issue because it is our duty as educators to provide accessible, meaningful, and engaging instruction to all students by carefully considering individuals' unique needs and circumstances. It is imperative that we consistently act in the best interest of all students. The conflict lies in the evaluation and identification of students for special education, specifically ensuring we are providing adequate supports and services to students who are truly in need, while also protecting our Black students from misidentification. This closely relates to Principle 2 of the Model Code of Ethics for Educators, which is responsibility for professional competence, specifically working to engage the school community to close achievement, opportunity, and attainment gaps, and increasing students' access to the curriculum, activities, and resources in order to provide a quality and equitable educational experience. A reasonable, equitable outcome for this dilemma would be the implementation of a standards-based school reform that is culturally responsive rather than heavily reliant on high-stakes assessments, as Townsend explains. This has the potential to drastically decrease the number of Black students referred for evaluation for special education. My current thinking about this dilemma is shaped by my experiences as a special education teacher, close examination of our district and buildings equity data, and ongoing research. Data shows that if you are a Black male in our district, you are 76% more likely to have an IEP for behavior. My teaching experiences and research influence my stance that the reliance on standardized tests, as well as the subjective measures and data utilized during the special education evaluation process, are root causes of this overrepresentation. Standardized testing plays a fundamental role in the special education evaluation process. However, in Mankin's discussion on the achievement gap, he notes that African American and Latino students' scores are lower on average than their white and Asian American peers, already placing them at a disadvantage. Furthermore, subjective measures such as teacher interviews and observations are also utilized in evaluations. This data can easily be skewed by implicit biases, stereotypes, and discrimination. A differing perspective is that standardized testing is a necessary component of school reform movements in accordance with the No Child Left Behind Act, which aims to improve outcomes for disadvantaged students. As Zhang addressed, others may argue that the root cause of this overrepresentation is not a result of issues with evaluation practices, but rather is most closely related to low income, cultural differences, and English proficiency issues. In order to make progress toward equitable outcomes, educators must have a deep understanding of the variety of factors that contribute to the overrepresentation of Black students in special education. This is the first step toward enacting meaningful change. Through research, I have learned that this is a complex and multifaceted issue. I now have a deeper understanding of the multiple factors that contribute to this inequity, the lasting impacts this issue has on our Black students, and possible action steps to address this dilemma. I have a newfound perspective on how policies such as No Child Left Behind and movements to close the achievement gap, which are intended to support disadvantaged students, can contribute to and even exacerbate inequities such as this. The research article, Testing While Black, Standards-Based School Reform and African American Learners by Brenda Townsend provides very valuable insights on this issue. Specifically, she discusses the need for culturally responsive school reform initiatives as well as action steps for teachers, schools, and districts. Another valuable resource is the National Center for Learning Disabilities. Specifically, the article Significant Disproportionality in Special Education, Trends Among Black Students, which provides important background information on the issue, as well as specific policy and practice consideration for states and districts. I am committed to taking the steps necessary to become more familiar with the racial identity process for African Americans, as suggested by Townsend. I am motivated to continue confronting my own implicit biases while working toward becoming more culturally responsive. I will focus on implementing evidence-based instructional and behavioral interventions as recommended by Zhang. Providing students culturally responsive, targeted intervention through effective multi-tiered systems of support will ultimately decrease the number of students referred for special education evaluation. Additionally, I will advocate strongly for policy changes at building and district levels. Based on Townsend's suggestions, I believe my school and district should assemble committees to develop assessment methods that are more responsive to the learning and assessment styles specific to our population of students. A strength-based model of assessment that is closely connected to instructional practices should be implemented. I will advocate for my district to seek outside expertise to conduct training on disability identification that includes considerations for linguistic and cultural differences. I would urge my district to also implement and provide training to all staff members in culturally responsive teaching as suggested by the National Center for Learning Disabilities. It is evident that the overrepresentation of Black students in special education is a prominent equity-related ethical dilemma that greatly impacts students across the country. It is absolutely imperative that educators familiarize themselves with this complex issue and take action steps toward more equitable outcomes.